Malachi Martin and others have talked about that at some point in the 60s, there was some sort of enthronement of Satan or
Right.
diabolical infiltration. I hint at it in my book, Infiltration, but I don't go too far on it because I don't know the details. That something happened in the Vatican where you have Freemasons, occultists,
Hmm.
whatever you want to call these people, they're definitely under the influence of Satan, enthroning Satan. Now, what does that mean? You know, you talk about people can be possessed, animals, right, can have demons in them, places,
Right.
homes. What does it mean
Right.
to enthrone?
So basically, to enthrone Satan in a particular location basically means it's the inversion of, like, for example, the enthronement of the Sacred Heart or the Immaculate Heart. And so basically what you're doing is you're setting him up as the ruler or king or principality or power in that particular location. And so you're doing a specific ritual which empowers him so that he can influence those in the region or in the area. Basically, is essentially what it. And you yourself are taking him as your ruler or guide in that context. So that's the actual structure of it.
As I understand it, Satanists do this in all kinds of geographies, right? They're taking up
Yes.
space.
Yeah, there's a couple of ways they do it. One is they do the enthronements. The other thing is they open up. It's very difficult. I've only seen it happen a few times in my own coming across these things personally. Doesn't mean they're not happening more often. It's just that I've only had to deal with them twice. And that is what they call opening up a portal, which is the inversion of a Catholic Church. So the Catholic Church is it's the gateway to heaven, right? And so from there, graces flow to the region or the area, and a portal is the inversion of that, where they do a particular kind of a ritual, and it empowers the demons to influence people in the area and in the region. And so it takes a certain level of individual involved in the occult to be able to pull that off. I've known people who have tried to do it, but they've never been able to do it. But I've also known some people that were able to do it. But these were very high level people involved in the occult. That's two ways in which you can actually empower Satan in a particular location so that he can influence the people there or the various things that are there too.
If I were Satan, I would want to be enthroned at the Vatican. That'd be my front row
Yes.
seat.
Yeah, exactly. That reference in Malachi Martin's books, Windswept House, there's, without getting into too much of the details and stuff that would be sensationalized, there has been more than one source that has come out and confirmed what is contained in that book. Even the bishop in South Carolina, where the ritual took place, because it was done by a form of projection, even where the ritual took place, the bishop there did research, found out it was true, and then reconsecrated the church. So there is, because the information was in the archives. And so this is one of those things that, again, without getting too sensationalized, I think it gives us an indicator that it would be naive. Let me just put it this way. It would be naive for people in the church to not think that the primary target of the Satanists wouldn't be the Vatican. I mean, they're just going to go after it to the degree that they can.
Yeah, in war, you go for the capital city.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I've heard not say Father Ripperger, but other exorcists have said, yes, something like this happened in the 60s. Would you want to comment on that or not?
Again, some of this stuff we kind of know what it is, and other things we don't have absolute certitude about it, all the details, etc. But we do know that something happened. We know something happened in the early 60s, and it's based primarily on what other exorcists had said. So if you listen to the exorcists talking that were doing exorcisms in the 70s and 80s, who had been doing them for some time, they talk about the fact that something happened in the life of the church in which the time it took to liberate people went from, usually once you got faculties, it was a day or two, sometimes a week. Those were pretty difficult. The case that was in St. Louis, originally starting in D.C., but ended up in outside of St. Louis, where they processed it, took 59 days, was almost unheard of in that day and age. But they would go very quickly. An exorcist said that something happened because it was like a light switch. It went from things, you just kick these demons out. It wasn't that much. I mean, you still had to do some work, but they got out pretty easily, and it didn't take that long to all of a sudden, boom, now it took 8 months to 2 years. And so there's shift that happened in the power that the demons actually had was marked. And so there's all sorts of speculation about what would have caused that, etc. some exorcists hold that it had to do with that particular event, which Malachi Martin talks about. It's obviously talked about in the context of a fictional work, but as I mentioned, there's been, and you can get them right online, so I'm not saying it's conspiracy theory, I'm not saying anything that's not known publicly. A lot of people may not know about it, but you can go right online and find out about there's several other sources that verify that this particular thing happened. I have never had a chance to talk to those older guys, most of them because they're mostly dead now, but it would have been nice to be able to find out exactly timeline. Did they notice a shift? Because then that would give us some kind of confirmation or not that this was actually the cause of it.
Because if I understand correctly, the power of exorcism does not come necessarily per se from the exorcist.
Right.
It comes from the power of Holy Mother Church.
Correct.
The penance, the fasting, the faith, the health
right.
of the ecclesia, of the one
right.
Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. So if you
right.
have a weak church, you have a weaker exorcism. Is that too crude, or is that about accurate?
No, that's actually the exorcists, even in Rome recently, have been talking about that and stressing the reality of the fact that when you do exorcisms, first of all, what you're doing is you're acting on behalf of the church as a public agent, as an exorcist. So the effect is actually based upon the state of the church. So that's one of the reasons. It's obviously not ex opere operato, because if it was, then you just do the prayer and boom, they'd be out. And so they say, and it's not ex opere operantis in relationship to the priest, even though his sanctity can have some impact. Also, I talk about it in the book that the more experienced the exorcist is, very often the more rapidly he can get demons out, but that's not always the case in each case. So there can be an element of that. But they say it's ex opere operantis ecclesiae, which is from the church that's doing it, right? So it's basically the state of the church will have an impact on how effective the exorcisms are actually going to be. So we do know there's something in the church that seems to have resulted in it being somewhat compromised. It still has the authority from God. It still has these things. The demons still have to obey, etc. But there's something that's been somewhat compromised as a result, and as a result, it's taking us longer to get them out.